morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a look at the Lake Trio. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Uxie, we've got Mesprit, we've got Azelf. They've all been revealed together, and honestly, ladies and gentlemen, we don't need a video on each of them. I'd love to dig deep into a video on each of them. That's kind of my thing. That's what I enjoy doing. That would make me happy. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it's not terribly appropriate. You see, really, although they are a trio, this is Uxie and his cronies. Now, our translations do, of course, come from the lovely David Hochmann over at Rappelmann TCG over on Facebook. And they are a trio. There are 3 of them. And there's a lot of similarities between them. They've all got very low HP. Uxie has an HP of 70, as does Azelf. Mesprit's sitting there rocking 60. Now, this is actually incredibly relevant, because Professor Owl's lecture lets you search for free Pokemon with 60 HP or less. So if they all had 60 HP, you could use Professor Owl's lecture and get all 3 of them. You will want to be getting all 3 of them, more on that in a moment. As it is, you won't, so the 70 HP really sucks. They've all got a retreat cost of 1, which is nice and low, and that's lovely, and a skateboard, and blah, blah, blah. They're all Psychic type, which means you are hitting weakness on stuff like Buzzwole, but these aren't really attackers. That's not really the point here. You can attack. They've got attack. Some of them even do damage. But it's not really the point of this here. And they're all weak to Psychic. Which, I mean, look, they got 60 and 70 HP. If Espeon GX ever makes a comeback, then that'll take out Mesprit, but not the other 2. But that's really about it. But the real headline here, the thing we like about these, is the ability that Uxie has. Uxie's ability reads, if you have both Azelf and Mesprit in play, apply weakness for each Pokemon as ×4 instead. Now, I will try and clarify this before this video goes live, but I do believe if it is as written, that is yours and your opponent's, so this could be a little bit of a double-edged sword. It could hurt you as well, but as with all of this, if it's going to hurt you, don't play it down. So, 4 times weakness then. It's not new. It's not unique. We've seen it before. There was a Vileplume a little while ago that gave ×4 weakness. And it has seen a little bit of play. People have played around with it. And to be honest with you, it can be pretty good. You can take Pokemon that are frankly a little bit weak and a little bit rubbish and aren't really doing enough damage and turn them into real powerhouse attackers. Having said that, the Vileplume didn't see a huge amount of play. It was the one from Boundaries Crossed, incidentally. It was a stage 2. It was never quite good enough. There were too many problems with it. And when I say too many, 1. It's a stage 2. To be fair, the retreat cost of 3, meaning it was quite a big kind of Guzma target, or Lysander back then. That was a bit of a pain. Here, it's not that awkward in terms of getting it out. But you've got to have the Uxie, the Mesprit, and the Azelf. Now, if you're playing one of each of them, there is a chance one of them is prized. That's a little bit annoying. So you kind of play 2 of each of them, but now we run into 2 primary problems here. Problem number 1, that's 3 bench spaces. That's half the Pokemon you can have out on the field in one go. That's a bit of a pain. Problem number 2, that's 6 spaces in your deck. It's not necessarily the end of the world. You know, you got 60 cards. You've got to use them up with something. But if you play 2 copies of each to try and make sure they're not prized, that is 10% of your deck given out to this combo. And on any game where 2 of the same one are prized, and they will happen, rarely, but they will happen, then that's essentially 6 dead cards in your deck. Now, to be fair, they've got some useful attacks. But generally speaking, not particularly good. Having said that, the ×4 weakness is great. A card that I really, really like here, which is coming out in the same set, or actually no, in GG the End, the set before in Japan, although they're all in Unified Spirit over here. Meditite. 40 damage for 1 energy, and alright, you can't use it next turn. But let's say for argument's sake, you put a Diancie Prism Star down. Just Diancie Prism Star, nothing else. Against a weak Pokemon, you're doing 240 damage. Oh, look. Pikachu and Zekrom is weak and has 240 HP. Now, to be fair, you've got to have the Meditite in the active, and you've got to have Diancie, Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit on the bench. That is 5 of your 6 Pokemon dedicated to this combo, but they're all single-prize Pokemon and using 1 energy on a single-prize Pokemon to knock out a Tag Team GX and take free prizes. And that's what you can do. You end up with a really awkward deck here. But the option essentially is, yes, you've got to give up your bench space. But what you do is you play a bunch of really weak Pokemon. You play a bunch of, evolving Pokemon. But you play evolving Pokemon that hit for different weaknesses. And all of a sudden, these attacks add up hyper quickly. Let's take Mesprit, for instance. Mesprit, you can see, does 20 damage for a single Psychic Energy. But if you're playing a bunch of different Pokemon, use Rainbow Energy, search it out with Energy Lotto, it's really not that big a deal. Well, all of a sudden, you add a Choice Band, and that 20 becomes 50. With 4 times weakness, that 50 becomes 200, and you're getting a one-hit KO on a Buzzwole. So essentially, if you can be doing 20 damage, then to any GXs, that's 200. If you can be doing 30 damage, then to any GX, that's 240. And if you can be doing 40 damage, then to any GX, that's 280. All of these are assuming you're hitting for weakness and using a Choice Band. This is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. And that's how you play Uxie. That's how you do it. You don't worry about using stuff like Buzzwole. Yeah, Buzzwole hits 30 damage for a single energy, but it also gives up 2 prizes. Now, if you wanted to use Buzzwole, on the other hand, see what I did there, then you're doing 30 for 1 energy, although to be fair, I'd probably rather use Meditite. And the thing is, if you can be using a bunch of 60 HP Pokemon, we can go back to Professor Round's lecture and just be using this. And that's what people did with Vileplume. You play 1 or 2 Pokemon to hit for every weakness. You make sure that they've got single energy attacks that do just enough damage. You even play Rainbow Energy just in case they're coloured attacks rather than colourless, and you hit everything for weakness. Now, against non-GXs, this could be a slight pain, because you do run into some issues in terms of, well, let's take Mesprit, for example. Well, you're doing 80, and 80's fine, but 80's not really getting that close to Buzzwole. And the problem is, against non-GXs, you're not using Choice Band. And if you're hitting 4 times weakness, Choice Band essentially does an extra 120 damage. That's huge. It's not ideal if you can't use Choice Band. We do have Incineroar coming, which just lets all of your Pokemon do an extra 30 to the active. But the problem with this is, quite simply, it's a stage 2. It's too awkward. But there is very much a deck here. There is a deck to be used with Uxie, just having 4 times weakness and lots of weak Pokemon. As for the attacks, none of them are terribly inspiring. Uxie hits 30 for free energy, 30 for double colourless, given its ability I would like. For free energy, even though they're all colourless, it's too expensive. Azelf has an attack for 1 colourless energy that lets you put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. Maybe you catch him with a Magikarp on the bench. Maybe you can spread that damage around and it's the difference between a KO and not a KO. It's not out and out terrible garbage, but by the same token, it's also not amazing. And Mesprit's other attack, 1 Psychic Energy, search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon, put them on your bench and shuffle your deck. It's Bridget, ladies and gentlemen. Bridget is back. And I actually quite like this. Now, do please remember that putting them onto your bench using your attack means they're there at the beginning of your next turn, ready to evolve. Though, as I've said, really here, we want to focus on basic Pokemon. We want to be having single energy attacks with little Pokemon and be rolling. I'm not loving any of the other attacks on these Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, Mesprit's fine. It's a decent setup attack. You can get all your Pokemon out. And certainly in the early game, it might be the best you've got. But remember, these are all basic Pokemon. So the first turn you can attack, you should just be attacking. You should be using something like a Mesprit to go nuts. Professor Round's lecture here is your friend, but you can also just play a bunch of cards like Nest Ball to search out your basics and get rolling. I think this takes up a lot of space in your deck, and I hate how much space it takes up on your bench. But the fact of the matter is, you can play one of every type of Pokemon, and against EX and GX decks, you can be taking basically a KO every turn for a single energy. Less good against non-GX decks, but just play some Pokemon that have slightly bigger attacks, you'll still be fine. 50 damage still turns into 200, which should KO any non-GX. I mean, to be honest, 40 should get the vast, vast majority of them. I like it, ladies and gentlemen. I like it a lot. I'm going to be giving the trio as a whole between 3 and 4 Wussies. As you've seen, the other Pokemon really are extremely weak. Although I don't hate Mesprit's first attack. They really are just backups for Uxie. And I know it's awkward, and I know it's not always going to work, but I can see people making a deck out of this. I can see this seeing some play, and I can see people wrecking in literally like 3 turns. Because if you're using lots of little basic Pokemon, hitting for 200 damage a turn, remember, 20 damage plus Choice Band and 4 times weakness, which can all be done in a single turn fairly easily, goes to 200. People are going to make this work. But I want to know what you think. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Uxie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WussiePlays, where we talk about games that don't have Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.